I've been running Hobgoblins non-stop for several weeks now, and I was getting really frustrated with the stat blocks that were available either edition of 5th edition or in Flea Mortals, and I wanted to make my own. If you want 10 Hobgoblin stat blocks and you want to run Hobgoblins for an entire campaign, this video is for you. Stay tuned. Welcome to Mystic Arts, where instead of going to therapy, I homebrew monsters. My name is Daði, I'm a professional writer and director, and I've been DMing for over 10 years. The Hobgoblins in this new edition are kind of weird, aren't they? I was flipping through and I discovered that the new Hobgoblin doesn't have martial advantage anymore, they have pack tactics. Which I suppose is a fine thing for a regimented unit to have. They all have advantage on attacks if their friends are next to them. But I don't know, I just felt a little miffed, like that was the kobold's thing, and that the job of these smaller monsters is to have one of these abilities that sort of show you who they are and what they're all about. And now the kobolds and the hobgoblins have the same ability. What's especially weird about the new hobgoblin is that the hobgoblin warlord and hobgoblin captain have an aura that gives other hobgoblins advantage, which they don't need because they have pack tactics. So you're playing D&D and you see that the commander is giving everyone advantage and you go, oh crap, everybody kill the commander. Then the DM says, congratulations, you killed the commander. Everyone still has advantage because they all have pack tactics. That's incredibly deflating. And another thing I noticed when I ran the hobgoblins the other day is that there are all kinds of numbers and they're different per hobgoblin. There's no carryover. The AC goes 18, 17, 20. The to-hit modifiers increase by 1 per stat block from the warrior to the captain to the warlord. So does the damage. And the aura of authority on the captain is 10 feet and on the warlord is 30 feet. So I ran an encounter with them and I thought, that's not working. I'm going to try the Flea Mortals Hobgoblins. And they're a lot better in a lot of ways. First off, what's great about the Flea Mortals Hobgoblins is that you get 10 of them. So you have enough to run for an entire adventure. They also include 2 special demons that these hobgoblins work with. These hobgoblins are sort of more fiendish than fey, which is really cool. There's even the CR8 boss hobgoblin, so that if you want to end an adventure with a hobgoblin fight, it doesn't have to be just one of the regular hobgoblins. It could be a action-oriented style villain, which I think is great. Top marks in terms of flavor, intention, and just cool factor in general. But I have a problem. Same with the 2024 Hobgoblins. The Hobgoblins and Flea Mortals all have different modifiers at different numbers that make it so that I can't remember it in the middle of a battle off the top of my head without referring to the rulebook all the time. And nothing explains this better than the Infernal Ichor ability on the Flea Mortals Hobgoblins. If you kill a Hobgoblin trooper, when the trooper dies, their corpse unleashes a spray of burning orange ichor. Each creature within 5 feet of the trooper takes 2 fire damage. But if you do it to the War Mage, it's 5 fire damage. If you do it to the Incinerist, it's 3. If you do it to the Smokebinder, it's 3. Death Captain is 5. And the Fire Runner is 5. And the minions have a different version of this ability, which is named the same thing. When a creature within 5 feet of the minion reduces the minion to 0 hit points, the minion's corpse unleashes a spray of burning ichor, and the creature who reduced the minion to 0 hit points takes 1 damage. So sometimes it's AoE, sometimes it's single target, sometimes the damage is 1 or 3 or 5. And that meant I never remembered exactly which version of the ability to use, so I never used it. Which got me thinking about modular design. What if we designed a bunch of monsters where the math and the features were literally like little modules attached to them, and they'd hop between stat blocks in such a way that I always know this hobgoblin has this feature, it works like this. This goblin has the same feature, it works the same way. That was design goal number 1. Can I make a bunch of hobgoblins that are all modular in design? Design goal number 2, I like the way that Flea Mortals has enough hobgoblins to run an entire adventure. Can I do that? Design goal number 3, can I make sure that these new hobgoblins I'm making retain their special feature as hobgoblins and they don't get pack tactics or other features from other monsters, but features that tell the story of a high AC, high damage, low hit point monster? Because that is who the Hobgoblin is at its core. Even in the new edition, where they removed martial advantage, they upped the average damage of the attacks. The Hobgoblin Warrior has a longsword attack that does 2d10 plus 1 damage, despite the fact that he's holding a shield. So it's an average of 12 damage, which is about the same as the Hobgoblin would have done if it had its original longsword doing 1d8 and 2d6 from martial advantage. So they have martial advantage, they've baked it into the stat block and they've hidden it, and then given them pack tactics on top. So I want to hold on to the design intent, I want to expand it to a new suite of stat blocks enough to run an entire campaign, and I want it to be so easy to remember the numbers that you could run a bunch of different hobgoblins all in the same encounter without deep frying your brain. This is the Hobgoblin Warband. 9 different Hobgoblin stat blocks ranging from CR half to CR 12, and more than enough to run for an entire campaign. Let's have a look at the first one. This is our base plate, the Hobgoblin Regular. You can see here, they have an AC of 18, retaining the original number of 18, and they get that, if you notice, from chainmail and shield. I've lowered their hit points down to 9 because I think they should be one-shottable. The AC is high enough that I think as a reward for hitting it, you should just be able to almost certainly, kill it. Dark vision 60 feet, languages I didn't change, CR didn't change, habitat, treasure remains all unchanged. But what I did is I renamed Martial Advantage and changed it a little bit for the new edition. It is now called Regimented. The Hobgoblin deals an extra 7 or 2d6 damage to a creature it hits with an attack while the Hobgoblin is within 5 feet of an allied creature that isn't incapacitated. Unless you know Martial Advantage by heart, you might not notice the change, but here it is. This new Hobgoblin doesn't need the creature they're attacking to be next to both them and an allied Hobgoblin. They just need themselves to be next to an allied Hobgoblin. They do extra damage when they're next to their buddies. It is dead simple. And why did I change it to Regimented? Because Advantage has a specific meaning in the game system. I thought, let's just get rid of it entirely and use a new single phrase word that means roughly the same thing and is evocative for being a Hobgoblin. They are regimented. Hobgoblins are part of an army. You can see the longsword now is likely to hit at a +4 instead of a +3, and the damage is 1d8 +2, and I removed the longbow and gave it a javelin instead. Now, why did I do those things? First off, the reason the math changed, so it's now +4, is because the strength went up by 1, because I didn't want there to be different strength between the lowest tier unit and the sort of next immediate unit in line. I wanted them both to have the same attack and damage modifiers, so that if I'm running a mixture of monsters on the table, I know which ones have what bonuses and that most of them have the same bonus. I removed the longbow because right now, the way I rewrote Regimented, they'd all have extra damage on their longbow attacks, and I think that makes them tougher. But also, it was really frustrating me that they had a shield and a longbow, and there's nothing in the stat block that explains how they're able to do both. There isn't an action on there that says that they stow the shield and they pull out the longbow. So is the intention, this always confuses me, I mentioned this in the Monster Manual review, is the intention that Hobgoblins have some kind of special shields that they can carry and shoot a longbow at the same time? My players would balk at that. They would say, why can't I keep a shield on my back and get +2 AC? They would ask, why can't I stow a shield for free? And I figured the easiest way to do this is just to not give them a longbow. So instead, they have a javelin. I toyed around with the idea of having Regimented only work on creatures that also have Regimented, and I decided against it because the use case for Hobgoblins in early D&D adventures, when you're all first level, is that there are some goblins and there's one Hobgoblin boss. That's how they did it in Lost Mine of Phandelver. That's how they do it all the time. So I wanted to make sure that when you run these Hobgoblins, these new Hobgoblins are still able to have the Regimented trait, even though they don't have other Hobgoblins with them. They just have goblins or bugbears or whatever. They still do extra damage. But obviously, later on, when you're running for 6th, 7th, 8th, maybe 10th level characters, you can still run these Hobgoblins. And I'll show you more on why in a second. Next up, Hobgoblin Archer. You can see here the AC goes down by 16, and that's because the Archer lost his shield. Now, all I need to remember is that all the Hobgoblins are wearing chainmail, the Archer isn't, because he's got a longbow, both hands. The Archer's longbow does an average of 6 damage and an extra 7 from Regimented. Now that's quite a lot of damage. The Archer only has the 1 attack, but if it hits with the attack, it reduces the speed of the target by 10 feet. Over the course of this video, if I've done my job right, you start building an encounter in your head. Hang on. The Archers also have Regimented. They also benefit from it if they've got Archer buddies next to them, and they reduce the target speed by 10 feet. So you do a line of Regimented soldiers at the front, a line of Archers at the back. The Archers slow down the party while the party attacks the regulars. That's pretty cool. What if you had better regulars? Well, you're thinking about the Hobgoblin Pikeman. Now the Pikeman also has AC 16 because he's got a pike in both of his hands. He's got more hit points, 26. He's still got Regimented. He's got 2 attacks, the pike or the javelin. Does a little bit more damage with the pike, has a reach of 10 foot. And here's the rub, everybody. Reaction, pike wall. When a target moves within 10 feet of the Hobgoblin makes a pike attack against that creature. And if you're using them in a line where there's a string of them giving Regimented to each other, what actually happens is you get within 10 feet of the line and 3 of them take a reaction to hit you. And then it's their turn and they all hit you twice again. These guys are incredibly scary. And they're not that much different from a regular Hobgoblin. They have extra hit points, but all the other math is the same. The attack bonus is the same. The damage bonus is the same. Their AC is lower because they aren't holding a shield, but they're doing an average of 42 damage a turn. And if you've got 3 of them, it's an average of 126, assuming they get their pike wall attack and they're both their regular attacks. 126 damage. Suddenly you're able to take regular-ish hobgoblins and challenge a wide range of party with them. You can mix them as archers, regulars, and pikemen, and you can create a really dynamic encounter. And by the way, you only have to memorize 1 to hit bonus, 1 damage bonus, and just a couple of ACs, shield or no shield, and you know that a shield is +2 AC, so you just know that. I made a Hobgoblin Wolfrider, also doesn't have a shield, also 16 AC, also got regimented, has the same longsword and javelin attacks, but it's got a bonus action and a reaction to make him a cavalryman. Number 1, the Hobgoblin orders its mount as a bonus action to move up to its speed and take an action. That action can be dash or disengage or an action printed on the mount's stat block. If the Hobgoblin takes this bonus action, the mount does not move or take any action on its own turn. So now there's sort of a baked-in feature on the cavalryman that says the mount goes when the cavalryman goes. And it's not controlled mount or wild mount, not the setting, but it's this other thing where it's got cavalry, it's a monster feature, lets it use the mount in this interesting way. It's also got a reaction to when a creature hits the Hobgoblin with an attack, the Hobgoblin's mount takes the damage instead. And obviously I made a mount. I made sure to keep the same AC as the cavalryman. It's got a little bit more hit points. It's got pack tactics because it's a dire wolf, and it's got a bite attack that can knock creatures prone. Suddenly, I just feel like there's a whole range of its stories and adventures and counters I can build with these guys, and I'm not really hemmed in by anything. I can go hog wild. Let's have a look at the higher tier monsters. The Hobgoblin Lieutenant, AC 18. It's got the shield again. Still got regimented, still got a longsword, still got a javelin. It's got 2 attacks, and now we get to a new trait, a new module on the stat block. I've added in Aura of Authority, which is the same as Hobgoblins get in the monster manual, except it's a 30-foot emanation, not a 10-foot emanation, and gives everybody in it an advantage. The reason I changed this is because I was running an encounter with 1 warlord and 2 captains, and I kept forgetting which aura was what, because there's a 10-foot aura and a 30-foot aura and a 10-foot aura, and then I move all the guys on the map, and then I'm like, who's in the aura, who's not in the aura? Why is it called the same if the size is different? Let's just make it be 1 clean module. It's 30 feet. It is so much easier to remember. And ultimately, when you're running D&D, there isn't a computer running all this. Baldur's Gate isn't figuring out the auras. You are. And you're running loads of monsters, you're adjudicating the player's turns. You're trying to figure out, how does this spell work? Does it counter this monster ability? You're doing 50 things at the same time. You're doing voices. You're describing attacks. Let's take one thing off your plate. Let's have all the modules be the same. Module in this case being Aura of Authority, Regimented, Longsword Attack, Javelin Attack, AC 18. These are all these same bits. So now the stat block isn't that different. It's basically the same stat block. So it doesn't take that much effort to add it to your roster. It doesn't take any cognitive load to have loads of different stat blocks because they're all easy to memorize. By the way, I've been able to homebrew this really quickly because I've been using Anto from Icarus Games' Quick Monster Builder spreadsheet. It's this list of attack bonuses, ability modifiers, initiative, and whatever. And it's really easy to, just as a quick reference guide, look at this sheet and then build stat blocks from there. Go check out Anto's video on this, link in the description. Moving up to the elite tier, we have the Hobgoblin Vanguard, a CR4 scary creature. And you can see the AC's gone up by 2. That's because he's now wearing plate armor. Plate plus shield, AC 20. For Hobgoblins, since high AC is a baked-in part of their fiction, I made sure that they're allowed to have incredibly high AC. And I'm okay adding a new AC now because we've entered a sort of new tier of play. And I'm describing it by it being plate armor. So the increments are also always by 2, 16, 18, 20. It's not 18, 17, 20, right? They just scale up in orders of 2. Easy to remember, easy to keep in your mind. And what does this guy do? Well, he's still regimented. He's still got 2 attacks. The attacks now do +3 damage, +6 to hit, which is bumping him up a tier. And you'll see that math carry on for the rest of some of these stat blocks. And he's got a Warhammer. Why has he got a Warhammer? Because it can push people 10 feet straight away from the Hobgoblin. This is a weapon mastery. I was baffled reading the monster manual that so few monsters had weapon masteries. So I decided to give it to more of them, especially the Hobgoblins who are regimented soldiers. Like the fiction of Hobgoblins is this army that's going to conquer your lands. So yeah, give him Warhammer, have him push targets 10 feet, and then he's got Standard Bearer. Recharge 5/6. Allied creatures in a 30-foot emanation can use their reaction to move up to half their speed without provoking opportunity attacks. They must end this maneuver closer to the Hobgoblin than they started it. So what do you do with this guy? Well, you've got your line of pikemen, your line of archers, and you put a vanguard in the middle of the pikeman line. When the party comes in and attacks the pikemen do all the reaction attacks, and then the vanguard pushes a target, breaking through the line, and uses standard bearer to get pikemen to flood into the line. Now they've sort of pierced the party heroes' formation, and they've got hobgoblins in their ranks, but the hobgoblins can all move in such a way that they stay within 5 feet of each other, and they all still have their pike wall reaction so they can go poke at the enemy. Suddenly, you're also telling the story of a regimented unit of soldiers conquering the land, right? The Hobgoblin Commander, AC 20, still, plate and shield. You can see that he's got more hit points. You can see he's got 1 legendary resistance, just a 1. Aura of Authority, 30 feet again, regimented still. And now it's a bit longer of a stat block. He's got a long sword that when he hits a target, an allied creature within 60 feet that can see the Hobgoblin can take a reaction to move up to their speed without provoking opportunity attacks. You can also see he's got a longbow that slows people down, the same as the archer. And an order, an allied creature within 60 feet that can hear the Hobgoblin can use the reaction to move up to their speed without provoking opportunity attacks and make a melee attack. So the commander's job is to stay alive, probably in the back rank, close enough that everybody can get his Aura of Authority at least, and then make the Hobgoblins move in such a way that they keep their regimented trait. Say there's a line of 6 Hobgoblins, and the players kill the guy in the middle. Well, now there's a gap, and let's say they kill 2 of them. This guy's no longer getting regimented, right? So what the commander does is he tells this guy to go move here, so now there's still everybody getting regimented, and there's still a front line. Then he can tell this guy to make an attack. Right? The Hobgoblin Commander controls the battlefield in such a way by moving his allies, not targeting the enemy, moving the allies in such a way that they all get regimented, they all get their extra attacks, they benefit from standard bearer or whatever reaction they have, and plays that way optimally. Reaction, if hit by a melee attack while holding a weapon, the Hobgoblin adds 3 AC against the attack. Simple, definitely not complicated. This is very similar to the Hobgoblin Warlord. I renamed it the Commander. I renamed all of the stat blocks here so that you wouldn't get confused which one you're talking about if you're ever having to compare and contrast. And if this were the 2024 Monster Manual or the 2014 one, that we'd stop here. We'd have a CR6 Hobgoblin as the most scary Hobgoblin, and that would be it. But I think you should be able to fight a Hobgoblin boss battle at later levels. So I made 2 more stat blocks. The Hobgoblin Steelmage is really cool. I love this guy. He's got the same hit points as the commander. His AC is lower, 16, and he's still got a legendary resistance, and he's still got regimented, but he's got a multi-attack with a recharge on it, and the Hobgoblin makes 5 Flurry of Steel attacks. And Flurry of Steel is an attack that does 3d8 force damage, and the Hobgoblin teleports up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space he can see within 5 feet of a hostile creature. And he's got 5 of these, so he can then attack again, teleport, attack, do it 5 times. So when your party shows up, the Steelmage goes and attacks everybody. They all take an average of 23 damage if he's got regimented. If not, then it's 16 each. That's terrifying. Now, luckily, it's recharge 5/6, so in the interim, while recharging, he's got some other stuff he can do. He's got spellcasting, where he can cast Mass Cure Wounds, Dimension Door, Cloud of Daggers. He's got a bonus action to summon a fire elemental, which he can then command, and the reaction to cast Counterspell and Shield, because this is a mage after all, and the mage has to be able to counterspell and shield. I think this guy is so cool. It's such a weird thing that he could just teleport and do this, and the multi-attack and recharge is fun. I had a lot of fun designing this. And finally, the Hobgoblin General. Above the commander, there is a legendary figure in the army that can not only boost morale and resolve, but take on powerful heroes all by himself. If you're running an adventure that goes from level 1 to 11, this could be the boss at the end of that. You have to make sure that he's got commanders and steel mages and stuff with him, because on his own, he's not terribly scary. But it could be the end boss to a campaign like that. And I think that's awesome. I think you should be able to run a whole adventure using one core monster. And it should be able to be most of the monsters you're supposed to be able to fight at lower levels. Because that way you can get introduced to them at low levels and then fight them throughout the campaign. The General, AC 20 again, plate and shield. Regimented, he's got 3 legendary resistances. He's got the Aura of Authority for 30 feet. He's got an Aura of Bravery, which makes allies within 30 feet immune to being charmed or frightened. He's got 3 attacks, which is the same as the commander. He does extra damage and fire damage, and you can now see the modifier's gone up to 8 and 4. I think that's fine for the one final boss. You can see that he's got the same thing as the commander. When he hits somebody, they can move. He's got the bow. They can also slow people down in order. Those things are all the same. He's got the reaction. Now, we considered increasing this reaction to more than 3, having it be 5 or something. But I thought, no, let's try and keep the math as flat as possible. Let's keep the parry at D3. And then he's got legendary actions. One of them is just moving and attacking. So if this guy wants to, he could make 7 attacks per turn. That's a lot of attacks, especially when the attacks are dealing 8 dice of damage. But it's also got reorganize. Allied creatures within 60 feet that can hear the hobgoblin can use the reaction to move 15 feet without provoking opportunity attacks and making a melee attack. And it says once per round. Now, the 2024 Monster Manual has this sentence it tags at the back of some legendary abilities going, the hobgoblin cannot use this legendary action until the start of their next turn. I thought, let's just write in once per round, keep it short, keep it simple. And that's it. That's all of the stat blocks. And I think this is plenty. Like, you should be able to build encounters with 1 pikeman as the commander, right? Or then the first time you meet a Hobgoblin Lieutenant, or the first time you deal with a Hobgoblin Archer, and it's just 1 or 2 of them, and that should be plenty scary if there's 2 and they're giving each other regimented. But then you enter a boss fight, and there is a palisade or a wall, and it's full of Hobgoblin Archers with Hobgoblin Pikeman in the pit, and a Steelmage that harries you, like teleports into your back rank. General that's commanding everybody to do it again. General can use reorganize to make all the archers shoot again. I just think that's an epic way to plan a campaign, and I think you should give it a go. These stat blocks, obviously they've been on screen the whole time. You can write them down or take screenshots, but if you want them in this Obsidian format so that you can edit them yourself, they are available on the Mystic Arts Patreon for Adept tier supporters. You'll get these hobgoblins and obviously monsters I design in the future will go on there, along with our monthly PDF, which right now is the Book of the Profane Word, which you cast evil spells. This channel is run by me and my girlfriend, and we appreciate your support. And if you want to be especially generous, you can like the video, comment, share, subscribe, or hit the bell to be notified when we release new videos. Until next time, keep studying the mystic arts.